In 1979, Bill traveled across America. As an Italian, he neither had prominent surnames such as Bueno, Kolobo, Gambino, Luches, nor a wealthy family that could provide him with shelter from the wind and rain. His sister and brother also had to go to school, and everything needed to be fought for by himself. So, with the buff bonus from the perspective of the traveler, an Italian-American legend began to emerge. From dropouts from illiterate families in Brooklyn to alumni proud of the red and white teams, from the strongest close-range striker in the Super Bowl to the literary and artistic hero in the lens of an Italian-American director, from investment legends circulating in Manhattan to mysterious tycoons behind numerous acquisition cases, from a Hollywood newcomer to a rumored boyfriend of a supermodel. This is a story of a traveler who delves into criticizing the corruption of Hollywood and Wall Street. Keywords: America, grassroots comeback, rugby NFL, 1980s, American entertainment, business warfare. Keywords of the novel: America 1979 No Pop-Ups, America 1979 TXT Complete Collection Download, America 1979 Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. I Want to Learn. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. I Want to Learn. In 1979, New York City, United States. At a fast food restaurant in an Italian community in Brooklyn, 7 or 8 extremely excited men were shouting around a dining table. "Come on, Buffalo, swallow it quickly. The pig next to me has eaten 25 of them. Don't add any ingredients, just stuff it into your mouth, Buffalo." Bill Ferrari, known as the Water Buffalo, suppressed the protest from his stomach and stuffed a hot dog and bread dipped in ingredients into his mouth, then chewed it heavily and swallowed it. During this process, Bill felt that every piece of tissue in his esophagus was trying to resist, but for the $50 that the winner could get, the Water Buffalo didn't hesitate to ignore the dissatisfaction and protest from his stomach and esophagus. This is the 26th hot dog he swallowed in half an hour. Victory seemed to be within reach, but his opponent, the little elephant, Winter, who weighed 250 pounds, 113.4 kilograms, still didn't give up. Trembling, he picked up his 26th hot dog. How could you possibly win? Bill immediately picked up the 27th hot dog without adding any ingredients, wrapped it in bread, and stuffed it into his mouth. He almost stared at his opponent while swallowing. This move naturally aroused the enthusiasm of those who had bet on Bill's side, waving Italian chicken feet and cheering loudly for the Water Buffalo's swallowing. "Great, that's it. This is the Water Buffalo I know, never giving up." Winter, nicknamed Little Elephant, was frightened by Bill's crazy swallowing action. Then he put down the hot dog that had not yet been wrapped in bread in his hand, and raised his right hand to gently wave, indicating that he had failed the challenge. Bill also struggled to swallow his last bite, then stood up on the ground. His sturdy body, weighing 1.88 to 99 kilograms, put a lot of pressure on the people around him. A few people quickly retreated, afraid that the buffalo's fist might hit him. The loser Winter was also stunned by Bill's stop, but he felt relieved when he saw Bill raise his right hand in front of him and gently rub his index finger and thumb. "Buffalo, you startled me. Don't worry, how could I not keep my promise? 2 people bet on who can eat better, the bet is $50. Winter's chubby face trembled for a moment. After taking a long breath, he took out his wallet from behind his waist, counted out 2 $20 and 1 $10 bills, and handed them to Buffalo Bill. 20 and $10 bills are the most common, and residents of New York City can tell if they are counterfeit by rubbing them with their hands. Bill, who had traveled through time, naturally inherited the skill of the original owner. After he confirmed that the money was not a problem, he patted his opponent Winter's cheek and turned around to leave. It's not that he didn't pay for the king's meal, but as the loser, Winter bears all the material costs for this competition, and of course, he also tips the waiter. Suddenly, one of the onlookers rushed out and walked quickly to Bill, who was about to leave the fast food restaurant. "Hey, Buffalo, you made me $80. Why don't you take a sip?" This person shook the four $20 knives in his hand. Not only Winter and Bill are betting, but nearby onlookers are also opening their bets, just like in a football game. The cheers of the fans not only include their love for football, but also their reluctance to part with the bet. Bill extended his left hand and glanced at the time displayed by Casio F.91W on his wrist. It seemed a bit late after 7:05. I'm going to a family gathering, so I'll let you go tonight. Tomorrow night, let's have a drink together. You pay the bill. In the late 1970s, the purchasing power of the US dollar was still quite considerable. $20 was enough for two people to get drunk, and Bill made this person earn $80. It was unreasonable not to indulge in a drink. The person nodded, and after a few pleasantries, the two parted ways. Bill walked towards his uncle's house with a big belly. 2 weeks ago, he traveled from Chioggia to New York in 1979 and became a poor Italian youth named Bill Ferrari. His Ferrari has little to do with that Italian sports car brand. Ferrari means blacksmith and ranks third among the most common surnames in Italy. The original owner was a very unlucky person, and his father was a master of public relations, also known as a thug, serving major pubs, nightclubs, and underground gambling venues in New York. My mother is a convenience store cashier, with a low salary but better than none. On a Saturday that was not a holiday, the parents of the original owner wanted a two-person world, so they entrusted their 3 children to their father-in-law's house and rented a car to visit New Jersey in the west of New York City. Unfortunately, there was a car accident, and a nigger, meaning black guy, who bought for 0 yuan, which was not so trendy at the time, was on his way to escape. He snatched someone else's car, pressed the accelerator all the way down, and collided with the oncoming original owner's parents. So both of them died. The father of the original owner was an only child, without brothers and sisters. His grandfather also died early. Fortunately, Italians attach great importance to their families, especially southern immigrants, so Bill's grandfather and uncle's family began raising 3 children. As the most developed agricultural country in the world, the price of food in the United States is naturally extremely low. The 3 siblings also have a comfortable life at their uncle's house. In addition, the clothes, shoes, and socks provided by the community, as well as the unique humanistic care of the Italian community, the original owner unexpectedly felt happy after their parents died. After all, no one came to urge him to study hard. Bill's grandfather's family was originally an illiterate family, and it is said that their great-great-great-grandfather once helped Leonardo da Vinci paint the Sixteenth Church, earning him the title of literary family in the Italian community of New York. But in fact, there hasn't been a single college graduate from the entire family, and not even a single community college graduate. It seems that my grandfather Conti's family has no connection with the literary and artistic family. Growing up in such a family, one naturally does not attach much importance to education, so after 2 weeks of studying in a public high school, the original owner decided to break free from the hardship of studying and drop out to work part-time. He said he was doing odd jobs, but in reality, he inherited his father's career in public relations, mainly working as a thug and security guard in gray areas. By comparison, Bill, who is now 18 years old, has dropped out of school for 2 whole years, while his 17-year-old sister is also in the stage of applying for university. Today's family gathering is naturally to discuss Bill's sister, Dorothy Ferrari's future academic arrangements. Besides his sister going to school, Bill himself has some small ideas. In his previous life, he was a very typical small-town swat. His parents were basically free. With his natural ability to do questions, he was admitted to a Western 985. He was exposed to the colorful world of the internet, played hard for 3 years, and then took the postgraduate entrance exam for 4 months. In 4 months, he had to review advanced mathematics, linear algebra, probability theory, English, politics, and 4 major courses. The difficulty level was not high, but in his previous life, he had a strong problem-solving skills. In just 4 months, he reviewed all aspects, and even if he took the master's degree in mathematics and English, he achieved a good score of 360 plus. Afterwards, he joined the research group of a newly hired young researcher, with a senior professional title and the same level as a professor, from a certain college. His mentor is not very old, so he naturally has ambition. He targets 4 directions alone and produces several stable results every year. During his 3 years of graduate studies, he also successfully learned all the excellent qualities that Xia people can possess from his mentor. For example, courage. Boss, the data was polished by me from the literature, and there may be a big gap with the actual situation. The defense experts may be difficult. They're afraid of a yarn, and they don't understand. For example, honesty. What is said may not necessarily be done, but what has been done must be said. What you have done with 0 points should be said to be 5 points, and what you have done with 5 points should be said to be 10 points. For example, getting close to elders. Boss, I did this experiment, but it doesn't match the results of a certain expert. Should I do it again? No need, your master has also done this before. Let's have a meal with him sometime and let him polish the experimental data. Bill still has an emotional attachment to learning and wants to continue his studies and obtain a bachelor's degree for himself. After all, a higher education is the key to the rise of the lower class. P.S. Newcomers and new books, seeking collection, recommendation tickets, monthly tickets, and investment. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Expensive tuition fees. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Expensive tuition fees. The layout of my uncle's house is similar to most middle-class families, with a 2-story brick and wooden house. The second floor has 2 bedrooms, a utility room, and a bathroom. The first floor has a connected kitchen, living room, and the master bedroom where my uncle and aunt live. There are usually many people living in this house, including Bill and his siblings, uncle and aunt, and uncle's son, Anthony Conti. Today, when we had a family gathering, more people came. Bill pushed open the door, and 16 pairs of eyes surrounding the dining table immediately turned to the door. Come on, we'll be waiting for you. My aunt specifically left you a double serving of noodles. Bill caught a glimpse and knew that most of his grandfather's relatives had arrived. His second aunt's family of 5 and his aunt's family of 4, along with his grandfather, grandparents, uncle's family of 3, and Bill's younger sister and brother, all 16 of them were waiting for him to arrive and eat together. It is the custom of Italians to kiss relatives whom they haven't seen for a long time, so Bill walked up to the dining table and kissed the cheeks of the 11 people who arrived at their uncle's house today. I didn't say why I was late. Bill only told his cooking uncle that he had eaten outside before, and 2 bites were enough. So the reasonable uncle stood up silently, took the plate left for Bill, went to the kitchen to divide most of it, and then brought it back. During this process, 15 people were chattering around the dining table, each talking their own way. Bill listened to 2 sentences and found that the topic was mainly about 2 uncles and aunts criticizing his cousin Anthony Conti for following the gang, as well as his second uncle and uncle scolding his daughters for their early love. The matter of Bill's sister Dorothy going to school has not become the main topic, and it seems that this group of people have little understanding of college. This is also a traditional skill of Italians. Once we talk about it, we can talk about several different women, from the love letters Michelangelo gave to his ancestors to the ones from his neighbors who brought them home. In short, it's all nonsense. What do you know? I'm called Johnny the Bone Crusher now. When I reach the position of partner, the entire staff on Bath Avenue will have to listen to me. Perhaps due to being belittled by female elders for being useless, Cousin Anthony suddenly became excited and waved his hands with chicken feet, trying to boast about himself in front of his aunt and aunt. Anthony is also a typical Italian New Yorker. When he was young, he didn't study hard and spent his days fooling around with peripheral members of the gang, doing things such as buying newspapers, running errands to buy hot dogs, and helping with delivery. As he grew older and became skilled at playing with guns, he was absorbed by the gang as a peripheral member, running a small town, dealing with street disputes, and collecting money from offline sources. During a certain accident last week, Anthony broke the troublemaker's arm with a punch in front of one of their partners, which can be understood as a peripheral leader of the club, causing a huge uproar. He was given the nickname Bone Crusher Johnny by the partner. Anthony himself believed that the mixed society was very promising, but although the Conti family had raised some children, they also knew that mixed society was not a good way out, so they strongly opposed Anthony's choice. Look at Dorothy, she can do such an excellent job in public schools. Now that she has just received an offer from a certain university, let's take a look at you. Auntie couldn't resist. Although she couldn't even name a well-known university, she didn't know that her niece, Dorothy, had not yet started applying. Fortunately, my uncle's return prevented the argument in time. After waiting for Bill for a while, everyone was hungry and the whole family made a neat pre-dinner prayer. Thank you for what my Lord Christ has given, Amen. 16 people neatly crossed their chests, and although Bill didn't believe it, he followed suit to avoid any abnormalities. During the meal, it was inevitable to argue. The two cousins of early love were attacked by the concentrated fire of their uncle and uncle. Aunties and uncles may have thought that Anthony was hopeless. Early love can still be cured, so they also criticized their daughters and nieces. One of the scolded cousins, Sophia Conti, was naturally unwilling. She loudly countered, "Why don't you talk about Enzo's love story while still in junior high school, and just scold my sister and me? Early love for boys is taking advantage of others, while early love for girls is being taken advantage of. Adults can naturally distinguish between these. Aunties and aunts are wise not to mention this and only criticize girls." Bill has a cousin sitting in his left hand, Vincent Conti, who is also one of the family's early lovers. After all, the probability of finding a virgin in a high school in the United States is even lower than the probability of a black person having a father. The criticism from his elders towards his cousin also made Vincent a bit nervous. He finished eating a few bites of noodles and then stared motionless at his most powerful aunt, afraid that he would also be named. Bill's right hand is his sister, Dorothy Ferrari, a strong woman who is 1.78 meters tall. Fortunately, Dorothy's facial features are relatively delicate, and with her oversized black-framed glasses, she finally gives off a hint of a student-like temperament. "What did you eat outside? My family has been waiting for you for a while." Seeing her brother not speaking much, Dorothy took the initiative to start a conversation. "Hot dog, Winter competed with me to see who ate the most, and the winner got $50. You know that fat guy Winter, right? He ate 20.5, he's such a pig." The stomach was still protesting, and Bill didn't want to speak. He briefly explained the reasons and consequences to his sister. "What's wrong with you, brother? We didn't have any money, and you lost $50 again. That's $50. Upon hearing these words, Dorothy didn't even lower her head to eat noodles. She turned her head and stared at her brother, as if this would let the illiterate dropout know how much $50 was. Bill snorted coldly, took out the 3 bills from his pants pocket, shook them in front of his sister, and then proudly said, "I ate 20.7. Dorothy's expression suddenly became complicated, with 3 parts surprised, 3 parts disdainful, and 5 parts helpless after being played with. She glared at her older brother and buried her head in eating noodles. The dishes on the dining table were gradually cleaned up, and the eating part came to an end amidst the criticism of early love from elders and school teachers. The cook is the uncle, the dishwasher is the second aunt, and Dorothy also went to get involved. After dinner, the atmosphere in the entire room became even livelier, more precisely, without the constraints of bowls, dishes, and jars, the body movements became more diverse. After all, tying the hands of Italians is equivalent to blocking their mouths. Moreover, there was Anthony, a rebellious and unfilial son. His uncles and uncles gathered around him in front of the TV, and Bill seemed to see someone pulling leather belt, as if preparing to give Anthony a complete childhood. Don't you know that joining a gang can lead to death? How did I teach you? Have I taught you how to follow those gang members? You can still make a lot of money without interacting with them. As long as you focus on entering the factory, who went to my own factory, now a month. Bill knew from the words of these immigrants, who are in their 40s, 50s, second and third generations, that they really haven't received much education. The reason they oppose Anthony's involvement in the gang is that it's easy to die, not that the vast majority of gang behavior is illegal, and joining is easy but difficult to exit. Even without the perspective of a traveler, one should know that with the background of a mafia, descendants are not easily able to remove their traces and enter the upper middle class controlled by the white rules. Take a very simple example of the rise of an Italian family. Rudy Giuliani, born in Brooklyn, went from high school to Manhattan College, then to New York University Law School, and then entered the prosecution industry. This gentleman's glorious achievements during his tenure as federal prosecutor and prosecutor for the southern part of New York need not be mentioned much. Everyone only knows one concept. He crushed the 5 major families of the New York Mafia and later served as the mayor of New York from 1993 to 2001. If it weren't for extramarital affairs, vision, and mistakes in standing in line later on, Giuliani would have had the potential to challenge the overall leadership. After all, he was heavily criticized in the 9/11 attacks and was known as the Mayor of the United States. Bill was still pondering how to embark on the path of success, as the noise in the room pulled him back to reality, with 7 or 8 Italian chicken feet waving in front of him. He stared at these dancing hands and decided what to say. All right, Anthony is just a boastful little thug. Why are you chasing after him and not letting him go? Bill pointed to his sister, Dorothy, who was cleaning the table. Aren't we discussing how to go to college with Dorothy today? It is now September, and logically speaking, early November is the deadline for ED, early decision. ED is simply an early batch of schools, usually better ones, and early January is the deadline for ED2 and RD applications. The admission results will be announced gradually from early December to March and April of the following year. In the autumn of the following year, admitted students can start their studies normally. As far as Bill knows, although he attended a public high school, his sister's SAT, Scholastic Assessment Test, score was quite good. The SAT is simply understood as the American College Entrance Examination, which is a necessary score for applying to American universities. Her community experience is also quite rich, and the high school principal is also willing to write recommendation letters to Dorothy, who comes from a lower-class background. According to the Admission Convention of American Universities, her younger sister can attend a very good university. There are 2 Ivy League schools in New York State, Columbia University and Cornell University. Although both are super expensive private universities, Bill thinks he can attend them if he can. Or Princeton University in the neighboring state of New Jersey is no exception. As far as Bill knows, the tuition fees at Princeton University reached $74,230 per year in the 1920s, and both Ivy League schools in New York State were also above $50,000. But this was in the late 1970s, before the US dollar could fully inflate. He estimated that an annual tuition fee of around $10,000 would definitely be enough. Several elders stopped criticizing Anthony and sat on the sofa to discuss the issue. The latter quietly stayed upstairs, casting a grateful glance at Bill before disappearing. "Dorothy, we don't understand much about college. You said it would cost a few $100s. "The highest-ranking grandfather," said Hussein Conti. Dorothy, who was chatting and laughing with her uncles and aunts, walked towards the sofa where the men were sitting from the chair near the dining table when she heard the male elders calling her. "Grandpa, it's like this. I'm planning to apply to public universities in New York State, which offer relatively cheaper tuition fees, such as Buffalo and Binghamton." Dorothy began to tell her grandfather and uncles about her initial plans. State universities in the United States often offer more tuition discounts to students in their own state, and the schools listed by Dorothy are quite strong. For example, the State University of New York at Binghamton is known as the Public Ivy League. I won't mention the New York State University system here. The New York State University system is the world's largest higher education system and the largest and most comprehensive state university education system in the United States. It has 64 member campuses and nearly 470,000 students, providing students with various types of educational opportunities. "It's probably $2,000 to $3,000 in tuition fees," said Dorothy as her voice lowered in decibels. "It's not her fault either, who makes this family basically the lowest level." Seeing the elders looking at the thousands of dollars in tuition fees, the sensible girl immediately added, "But please rest assured that I am preparing to apply for a student loan, so you don't have to worry about tuition fees. You only need to bear the miscellaneous expenses of books, accommodation, and meals." Loans. That's a scam. Those salespeople who don't say a word of truth will only tell you the benefits and won't tell you anything about how the bank scammed you out of your property. My second uncle was the first to oppose it. As an authentic Italian immigrant, he almost crazily rejects everything that is not Italian. The other elders also meant the same, nodding their heads and offering their own solutions. "I think it's better to find a godfather for such a large amount of money. I heard he can find someone to borrow money from." It can be assumed that an Italian believer in Catholicism must have a godfather. The Catholic godfather refers to a person who, when a baby or young child is baptized, gives a Christian name and guarantees to undertake their religious education. In the Italian community of Brooklyn, the godfather often has a gang background, and the people he recommends to borrow money must be loan sharks. P.S. New books for newcomers, seeking collection, recommendation tickets, and monthly tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Student Loans. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Student Loans. Whenever people see the words, American Mafia, the first thing that comes to mind for many people is the movie, The Godfather, the Mafia, and Sicily. Those who know a little more may diverge from movies like The Irish and America's Past, such as Jimmy Hoffa or the famous villain Al Capone. In fact, the American gangster concept conveyed by Hollywood movies to ordinary audiences is actually very limited, and the vast majority are only the gangster concept in the media and Italian-American directors. From a historical perspective, the largest gang in the United States has been the Irish-American community, although this group has little ambition and mostly operates on the streets and in fixed areas. Jewish and Mexican communities can compete with the Mafia. Part of the background of the American drama, Deadly Poison Master, is very authentic, and the products in Mexico and Colombia are exceptionally competitive, which has led the Mafia to withdraw from the industry and turn its financial resources into the gambling industry. There are two reasons why the Mafia is so famous. 1. Southern Italian immigrants who can nurture Italian-American communities are concentrated in the northeast of the United States, including the 6 states of New England, the Great Lakes, New York, and 2 Virginia states. Connecticut has been repeated twice, but it's okay for everyone to understand. Except for the West Coast and the Gulf of Mexico, major cities in the United States are all concentrated in this area, naturally possessing a newsworthy temperament. In addition, the first and 1.5th generations of Mafia are hard-working people who trade their lives for blood, and media outlets who enjoy big news naturally love to write stories about the Mafia. Secondly, there are many talented directors and actors born of Italian descent, such as director Martin Scorsese, whose works include Shutter Island, Wolves of Wall Street, Irish, New York Gangsters, etc. For example, international directors such as Francis Ford Coppola, Quentin Tarantino, Sofia Coppola, and Bernardo Bertolucci. Among the well-known actors, those with Italian ancestry include Ernest Borgnine, Nicolas Cage, Stallone, Madonna, Lady Gaga, Monica Anna Maria Bellucci, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Captain America actor Chris Evans. Although some actors do not admit to being Italian immigrants, they do indeed have Italian ancestry and are regarded as their own by Italian directors. With so many Italian-American directors and actors, there are naturally enough movies to tell the story of the Mafia. The influence of classic film and television dramas far exceeds historical facts. Through generations of word-of-mouth among audiences, the mafia has naturally become synonymous with Italian-American and even American communities. But in reality, in New York, Italian-American communities are not entirely equal to the mafia. For example, in the community where the Conti family is located, immigrants mainly come from southern Italy such as Naples, and members of the gang should be called Camorra, also known as Camorra. The biggest difference between this club and mafia is that they don't care about their bloodline and were the first to introduce the fashionable concept of partners. Partners are usually strong members of clubs who are not of pure Italian descent, playing a role in attracting talent, granting franchising, and expanding business scale. That is to say, the operational approach is more like that of a multinational corporation. Therefore, Camorra places more emphasis on efficiency and cares more about benefits. Bill thinks it's better to borrow student loans honestly when he asks them to borrow high-interest loans. At least the bank that provides college loans will not put the horse's head in the borrower's bed in the middle of the night. No, going to school is a matter of 4 years. I'm afraid I have to borrow money from my godfather once a year. If we don't pay the interest, we'll have big trouble. Bill quickly tried to persuade his uncles, and grandparents. After thinking for a while, he came up with a word. Unsustainable, yes, for years of tuition fees cannot be funded through an unsustainable source of one-time high-interest loans. What can we do then? The driver's second uncle waved his right hand, which he had made into chicken feet. We're not wealthy people. How could we all come up with so much money at once and not borrow money from our own people? Do you want to go find those kids at the bank? Bill also learned from his second uncle to pinch his right hand and said, actually, I have a very good solution. Someone really appreciates my sister's plan to sponsor her to college. He waved his chicken feet at his elders, then turned around to look at his sister Dorothy and blinked his right eye at her before preparing to talk nonsense. Although Dorothy didn't know what the illiterate brother was up to, she had a tacit understanding and didn't express any doubts in the first place. It's like this, Mr. George Jackson, the high school principal of Dorothy, greatly appreciates her hard-working and ambitious Italian-American girl, so he plans to sponsor her to go to college. Of course, the sponsorship amount is not much, only enough to cover the tuition fees of state universities. So I think if Dorothy only goes to state universities, we don't need to go to the lender recommended by the godfather. After all, it's just us Italians, and the interest is also quite high. After Bill finished speaking, his right hand instinctively made a motion of rubbing his index finger and thumb. What he said sounded true. The four middle-aged and elderly people with little savings looked at each other, then spoke in Italian and nodded. My uncle is a serious mall security guard, my second uncle is a driver who drives a large car for a logistics company, and my uncle is a supermarket freight worker. My grandfather used to wash his car at a car wash shop for half his life, but he didn't save much money. Such families naturally do not have the habit of saving money as educational funds for their descendants, and asking these three small families to spend $1,000 in cash would be a dead end. The principal in Bill's mouth was naturally not kind enough to pay thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars in college tuition for a student. A normal American man usually has three economic crises. The first one is the tuition loan he used to attend college, the second one is a mortgage, and the third one is the support he paid to his child and evil ex-wife after divorce. In fact, if you successfully obtain a high-paying career after graduating from college, then tuition loans are still relatively cost-effective, because compared to credit cards that often offer interest rates of over 10%, tuition loans for undergraduate students at 5.5% and master's students at 6.6% are not high at all. There is a very simple example. The marketing account claims that the student loan repayment has reached the age of 40, and the Archbishop of Ayaguanhai bought a car and a house in Chicago before paying off the student loan. The reason for paying off the student loan so late is purely because the student loan interest rate is low. I can give out $60 a week, my second uncle, who had been speaking in Italian for a while, suddenly said. Sophia and I can probably come up with around $40 a week, said my uncle. Sophia is the name of my aunt and the most commonly used Italian female name. It is not an exaggeration to say that half of Italian women have the name Sophia. Uncle also waved his right hand and said, then let's make it $40, $140 a week. It should be enough to eat, drink, and live. Yes, my second uncle also agreed. Plus, Bill has his own salary, so giving some money to his sister is enough to cover her college expenses. They roughly determined the source of Dorothy's living expenses for going to college. This kind of support is already the limit that this illiterate family can offer, because spending a few tens of dollars per week means that families basically have no additional entertainment activities. It can be imagined that in the coming years, they may not even be able to afford new clothes. Thank you. We are a family. Bill and his sister quickly went to hug each elder one by one, and gave them a face-to-face salute. P.S. For collection, for recommended tickets, for monthly tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. You should become a lawyer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. You should become a lawyer. The family gathering was quite successful, and Dorothy's living expenses and miscellaneous expenses for going to college were covered. Bill didn't mention that he was planning to return to high school to continue his studies, so he had to wait until he had taken care of the school before announcing it to his uncle's family. The entertainment activity for men after dinner is watching the replay of a baseball game, while women are still chatting around the dining table. According to what Bill heard, uncles and aunts seem to be gossiping about their colleagues' sex news, and there is no time to educate the children who are in early love. It's not their fault. In a normal American family, it's difficult to maintain a healthy marital relationship after giving birth to a child. The daily life of soy sauce, vinegar, oil, and salt can kill the passion of love. When the wave of admiration fades, the couple who find themselves swimming naked naturally choose to find a new partner. So, the biggest topic for middle-aged men and women is who got divorced again and how pitiful their children are. And when encountering a middle-aged man with a gloomy expression, it's not wrong to scold his ex-wife as a son of bitch, which means he's a son of bitch. It's even possible to establish a deep friendship with this man. When it was late at night and the baseball game replay was over, the whole family began to bid farewell again. Of course, the second uncle and grandfather did not forget Anthony, who had suddenly disappeared. They specifically called him down from upstairs and scolded him, telling him not to hang out with gangsters anymore. Finding a serious job was what he should do at his age. These words naturally didn't touch Anthony. This unfortunate young man's mind was now full of dominating Bath Avenue, and he couldn't even listen to the words of his elders. Thank you today. Look at Uncle Air, he's starting to pull his belt. Who does he think he is? My dad's not even that strict. After going upstairs and entering the room, Anthony smiled and thanked his cousin. The two bedrooms on the second floor, Anthony and Bill live in the larger one, Dorothy lives in the smaller one, and Bill's other brother, Neo Ferrari, lives in the miscellaneous room. That messy room barely had a bed, giving poor Neo a place to sleep. This is also an unavoidable matter. My uncle and aunt's weekly salary is around $90 to $120, and after deducting monthly expenses and property tax, there is not much left, so I am unable to change to a bigger house. Sure, who made you my brother? Bill fooled him a few times before asking, can you find me a temporary job that can earn money? I want to save some money for my sister so she won't be so embarrassed when she goes to college. Bill's current job is to work as a security guard for a nightclub, working 5 days off and 2 days off. His daily responsibility is to go to work in the afternoon and sit down in an inconspicuous corner of the nightclub. After the opening of the nightclub, if someone fights and causes trouble, and the lobby manager feels that it affects business, he will shout, "Buffalo Bill." The called Bill will quickly walk from the corner to the scene of the incident and decide whether to give the person a hard beating based on the situation. The best scenario is that Bill's massive body intimidates both sides in the fight, and the worst scenario is that Bill has to knock both sides unconscious and throw them out. The job responsibilities are very simple, and there is not much physical activity. Even working in gray areas, the salary is only $110, which is less than the median weekly income of $131 in 1978. For the original owner who didn't have to support his family, most of the $110 were spent by himself, but he didn't save a penny for a simple reason. He spent it all on food and drink. This is also the biggest reason why Bill's body is so strong. Since Bill traveled here, he has saved up 2 weeks of salary, and with the $50 he earned tonight, he has over $270 in his hands. Due to the continuous inflation in the 1970s, people from the middle and lower classes in the United States chose to consume first and then repay. Therefore, in the late 1970s, with so much money in hand, Bill was considered a millionaire. But that's not enough. My sister can get a loan for her college tuition, but the accommodation fee hasn't been resolved yet. Bill also wants to go back to high school and get at least a college degree. There are holes everywhere, and he can't fill them without money. Money. How much do you want? I have $40 here, and if it's not enough, I'll go borrow it. Anthony couldn't understand the meaning of saving money and only heard that his cousin needed to make some money for her, so he took out all the money from his pocket. Bill waved his hand and said, "That's not what I meant. I want you to find me a temporary job that can make money quickly." This made Anthony suddenly realize, "I understand, you finally have an idea. Let me tell you, tomorrow you and I will go to Bath Avenue to sell fans. One serving costs $10, and you take 50 cents. Sell 30 servings every day, which is $15. He rambled on, describing the bright future of selling fans to his cousin Bill. But that's not what Bill's thinking. Mexican clubs are almost squeezing out the market share of European gangsters in fans. Going to Bass Avenue now is equivalent to joining that in 4 or 9 years, pure bigwig. Moreover, in the upcoming 1980s, the FBI will take a heavy blow to the 5 major families in New York, and the federal prosecutor for the Southern District of New York, led by Rudy Giuliani, will constantly monitor the mafia and Italian-American gangs, using black means to make money, and in a few years, 80% will be sent. It seems that there is little hope from Anthony's side, and Bill has decided to go find his colleagues who are also nightclub security guards tomorrow to see what they can do. Bang bang. Anthony was speaking when suddenly someone knocked on the door. Bill opened the door and found out it was his sister, Dorothy. "Brother, can we discuss when to meet the person who supports me?" she asked. Bill turned around to look at Anthony and replied to his sister, "Tomorrow when I wake up in the morning, we'll set off outside to find that person." With Dorothy's intelligence, it was natural to guess that her brother was planning for her to apply for a student loan, but both of them were wise not to publicly disclose this matter at home. The next day, when Bill woke up, it was already 10 o'clock Eastern Time. This is also in line with his work habits. After all, he works in the afternoon and only finishes work after midnight, so he really can't get up every morning. Anthony is actually very diligent and has disappeared. Dorothy has been washing up early and waiting for her brother to go outside to discuss tuition fees. After putting on his old polo shirt and brown pants, Bill went downstairs and rubbed his face randomly 3 times, then put on a long beige jacket and walked out with his sister. "How about you apply to Columbia University and pursue a master's degree in law from that university?" Strolling through the deserted streets, Bill brainwashed his sister like this. "Do you only know about Columbia University?" Dorothy looked at her brother helplessly. "The tuition fees at this university are too expensive, over $10,000. Bill first responded to his sister's questioning, "Of course not, it's just because being a lawyer is indeed a good profession. Unlike lawyers from previous SIA countries, American lawyers are truly top-notch professions. A lawyer skilled in business and involved in major cases charges a fee of minutes. Being a partner of a well-known law firm, equivalent to a shareholder of an ordinary company, with an annual salary of $1 million is not a dream. P.S. Seeking recommended tickets for collection and monthly tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Bring the horse over. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Bring the horse over, Columbia University. Lawyers. Dorothy listened to her brother's future plan, and she was also a bit moved. She didn't understand why her brother, who was almost illiterate, suddenly understood university affairs so well. Is it an idea suddenly flashed through Dorothy's mind? My brother, who had dropped out of school for 2 years, went to understand the relevant situation for her and made such a plan for her. You also know that being a lawyer is a profession that can really be entered or exited. Even if it's worse, you can go to the local prosecutor's office and do a good job. You can become a partner of a large law firm, become the president of a state bar association, marry a senior executive or shareholder of a large bank, and have a business child. Bill constantly instilled in Dorothy a life path of studying law. The example he mentioned is the life path of William Henry Gates II, the father of Bill Gates, real name William Henry Gates III. Gates II founded K. L. Gates with 2 other partners in Seattle, also known as Gow Gates Law Firm. By number of people, this law firm ranks approximately 12th globally and is considered the industry leader in the Northwest of the United States. 2 Gates married Mary Maxwell Gates, the daughter of banker J. W. Maxwell, who had previously served as the president of the National Bank. After graduating from the University of Washington, Mary worked in charity and later took over from her father's position, becoming a director of the First Intercontinental Bank and eventually the president. Unlike what has been rumored online, she has never served as a director of IBM, but the CEO of IBM did indeed work for the same charity as Mary, and because of this relationship, Bill Gates caught IBM's fast train on DOS. Studying law in university and starting a law firm after graduation, constantly expanding and strengthening the law firm, and then allowing the second and third generations to engage in business and politics, can be considered the most secure way for social class advancement. Of course, in this era of continuous promotion of black equality movement, there are faster ways to achieve class leap, but because Dorothy's skin is not so black, Bill did not tell her. In North America, the bonus that skins receive in the public opinion field is much stronger than that of their native family in this gun battle uniform. Although in the eyes of the U.S. police, it may be a negative bonus. Due to some strange misunderstanding, the more Bill talked, the more Dorothy was moved, until her eyes turned red. Brother, I'll listen to you and apply to Columbia University in ED1. University offers in the United States, also known as admission letters, can be obtained in many copies, and scholarships from various schools will also be notified along with the offer. Anyway, ED1 announced the results in early December, and the deadline for ED2 and RD applications is only in early January of the following year. It's okay to rush to a good university. Okay, Bill nodded. As for the tuition fee, you can apply for the student loan yourself, but at home, you can say it's sponsored by your high school principal. If the family is going to hold a thank-you dinner, I'll talk to the principal and let him put this lie to the end. He roughly thought about it and found that there was really no major problem with doing it this way. Although Americans strongly dislike others doing things in their own name, Bill believes that with his persuasion, Principal George Jackson would be happy to help. Moreover, it is now the end of the 1970s, and the 1980s is approaching. The entire economy of America will not be prosperous for the next decade. If it weren't for Susie's true self-destruction, America wouldn't have been able to hold on for much longer. So spending some time in the ivory tower and waiting for the economy to improve before coming out to work and socialize is a good choice for Dorothy. The two of them walked and arrived at a bustling street. The magical aesthetics of the 1980s have begun to emerge, with elements such as instant noodles, high-saturation bright clothes, and Michael Jackson appearing occasionally on the streets. The Italian-American community is already conservative, and coupled with Bill and Dorothy's relatively old attire, walking on the street surprisingly has a hint of discord. Buzz, buzz. A sports car suddenly raced past the road next to the two of them, with a bright red body and a sign of jumping horses. It seems like a Ferrari. Bill muttered to his sister, actually having a definite answer in his heart. Due to the large size of the United States, local residents tend to choose cars when traveling, and the vast majority of communities do not have convenience stores or small chain supermarkets, so regular procurement has become a part of life. Therefore, pickup trucks that can load goods and pull people have become the favorite car model among Americans. Therefore, the main products of domestic American car companies are practical low-end cars such as pickup trucks and off-road vehicles, while high-end cars are often imported European sedans and sports cars. In this era, there are no other car companies with the Jump Horse logo. I heard it's a car company that happens to have the same name as our family, said Dorothy. Due to her name, she also learned about this sports car brand from some classmates who mocked her. After I finish school and pay off the student loan to earn money, I will buy you a Ferrari, she said. Bill smiled happily. Italians pay more attention to surnames, and the Ferrari surname is a coincidence. Anyway, he doesn't have any money. Since my sister is drawing big cakes like this, he also gives her a small expectation. Do you know the 40 Towers on Wall Street, which is the Manhattan Bank Building, the 70-story building between Nassau Street and William Street in Manhattan? Bill turned his head and asked. According to the previous historical trajectory, this building was purchased by de Jean Mao in 1995 and renamed as de Jean Mao Building. Dorothy nodded. She had been there for a few days during a social practice and had some impression of this building. Bill waved his hand and said, "When I get rich, I'll buy the 40 towers on Wall Street and rename them as the Dorothy Building, and then give them to you. You don't have to pay taxes to the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, to brag. Bill can brag whatever he wants." Dorothy's face was full of a smile, but she didn't break her brother's imagination. "Okay, then I'll give you a home on the top floor of the Dorothy Building, and we'll live together in Manhattan. When it spreads, the Ferrari family will be the only super rich living in the city center." According to the convention of American media, a billionaire can be called a super rich, that is, super rich. However, the tide of the internet has not yet arrived, and the new money crowd has not yet been born in a large scale. Old money usually has its own manor in the suburbs, and basically does not live in the city center. After all, at this time, the difference between New York and Gotham was only one name, and the wealthy didn't feel safe, so they naturally moved to the suburbs. Dorothy just casually said that Bill was a bit moved. Rebirth, he is so familiar with the development history of this era, and if he doesn't work hard, he will also feel sorry for his identity as a traveler. Dominating Wall Street and dominating Hollywood, I've been captivated by supermodels like Charlize Theron, Jennifer Connelly, Nicole Kidman, and so on. Come on, I'm not afraid at all. The more he thought about it, the more excited Bill decided to go get the money tonight. P.S. For collection, for recommended tickets, for monthly tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. I'll find you a job. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. I'll find you a job at noon. Bill and Dorothy had a meal at a fast food restaurant outside and brought a meal home for their younger brother Neo. Uncle and aunt both went to work, and Anthony was addicted to gang activities, so he naturally had his own lunch. In fact, this is also a reflection of the life of New Yorkers. Breakfast is eaten at home, and lunch is usually served with snacks such as fast food, spaghetti, or donuts. Dinner is more formal, usually at home, forming a large table or going to a restaurant. Even Italians who take a nap must succumb to this rhythm. Bill usually goes off on weekends and Sundays, so he doesn't have to go to the nightclub to work tonight. As agreed, he arrived at a tavern called Jack Walsh's Cafe. The colleague who invited him to drink last night, Eddie Serrano, happened to be resting tonight, so the two agreed to have a big drink here. On Sunday night, the New York workers who have to go to work tomorrow have a more enjoyable time playing. A pub with less fun naturally doesn't have many working days, but it's also mostly crowded. This is also a unique feature of New York, where nightlife is incredibly rich. If a man goes home directly after work, he is likely to be criticized for not being good at that aspect. A workplace woman who goes straight home after work will be labeled as lacking charm, which means she will fail to the point where no man can appreciate her. The rich nightlife and chaotic relationships between men and women are mutually causal, making American family values less solid. It was not until the late 20th century that the social trend of men and women rolling sheets at first glance slightly restrained. Serrano and Vosture, surnames ending in O and E, sound like Italian surnames or Southern Italian immigrants. That is to say, this is his own tavern, and Bill doesn't need to be polite either. After entering, he found Eddie, who invited him to drink, and sat casually on the high stool next to him at the bar. A Budweiser, on the rocks. He had always enjoyed drinking beer in his past life, and since his rebirth, he has not truly tasted the taste of American beer. This time, he just happened to have a smacking taste. The bartender was a medium-sized white man with black hair and blue eyes. When he heard the handsome young man sitting next to Eddie ordering a drink, he didn't immediately turn around to pour it out, but instead looked at Eddie. Eddie, who had been greeted by Bill's cheek slap, nodded and the bartender began to take action. "Buffalo, it's not that I praise you, you're really the most delicious Italian I've ever seen," Eddie said. Bill smiled and said, "Don't you take a look at my physique either." After speaking, he symbolically raised his arm to show off his biceps. Bill never thought about how the original owner ate it. With a height of 1.88 meters, he weighed nearly 200 pounds, and he didn't have the traditional obese physique of poor Americans with a swimming ring around their belly. Perhaps due to the talent of Italians, they never compromised themselves in terms of food. The bartender's movements were very fast, and in just a few words, he brought a full glass of wine to the table in front of him. According to Bill's observation, it should be much more than normal. This is also a special treatment that one enjoys, as the amount of alcohol consumed is much higher than others. Someone next to him immediately shouted, "What's going on? I came first. Can you serve this person wine first?" The bartender is very assertive and extends the classic Italian chicken paw gesture, "Don't eat the sour radish, close your mouth, I will serve you wine." The person shouting suddenly lost their momentum when they saw the chicken paw gesture and waited obediently. Bill, who was chatting with Eddie, witnessed all of this and learned that the tavern had a gang background. "By the way, do you know where you can find a temporary job? The kind that pays quickly, doesn't stick to gangs or guns," Bill asked Eddie. To be honest, although Bill knew that Michael Jackson would be in a mess in the next decade, MJ had already taken over, and Bill couldn't afford to invest the $200 he had in his pocket. Buy stocks, he knows that Apple will have a big decline in the 1980s, from top to bottom, and he is not willing to buy for the time being. It wasn't until the late 1980s and early 1990s that buying Apple stocks was the most profitable. The remaining well-known stocks, such as Microsoft, were not yet listed at this time and were not available for purchase until 86 years later. After pondering the current situation repeatedly, Bill finally understood why successful people often emphasize how the first bucket of gold came about. Because the first bucket of gold is the most difficult to earn. With initial funds, as long as one's vision is not bad, they can always roll up their wealth like a snowball. As a navigator, Bill's last need is his vision, he lacks a startup fund. Of course, Bill cannot sell his knowledge of the historical trend in the form of information, and it is uncomfortable to see others make money from the information he knows, not to mention how to make others believe what he is saying. He would rather not make money himself than let others use the information in his mind to make money. "Buffalo, you're making it difficult for me. There are many ways to make quick money. If you don't get involved in gangs or guns, there's basically nothing." Eddie shook his head, saying he didn't know. He is also a mediocre bottom Italian, and without following the gang members like Anthony, he already has a bottom line, and we cannot expect him to have more ambition. After fooling other gods, the bartender suddenly came over with a large glass bottle and calmly refilled the glasses for the two before asking Eddie why he shook his head. Eddie naturally explained everything to him in detail. It seems that the bartender and Eddie are very familiar, and Bill followed suit by saying his requirements. "Bro, it's difficult for you to do this. Why don't you go gamble? I'll say hello to the casino and not use any means on you." Bill knows that the biggest source of income for gangs in the northeast region of the United States is illegal gambling, and Italian-American communities control this industry. According to the bartender's words, he can let Bill play in the casino on his gang's territory, and keep the casino from cheating. Bill waved his hand and said, "Forget it. Gambling is not the way to make money, it's about spending money." The bartender was a bit reluctant and asked, "Are you willing to fight? We often have trouble at other casinos here, and the requirement for this job is that it's not from our gang, and the money we give is quite substantial." Bill shrugged, indicating that he wouldn't go. This job sounds like a scapegoat, causing trouble at the opposite casino and disrupting the business of the opposite family. Without the protection of the gang where the bartender works, death is not far away. What kind of oil tank can be sealed with cement, and then a Yazwa in New York Bay can provide you with a one-stop service from the mafia? Eddie, on the side, had a reaction and said, "Bro, this is his own person. Don't play tricks on Bill. His sister is going to college, and that's how he found a way to make money. It's like this." The bartender then looked at Bill from head to chest again, I thought. Going to college was a good thing, a big good thing. We're a family, you're going to earn tuition for your sister, right? Bill nodded. Although exclusivity meant that Italians loved to join the group, the bartender just now was clearly not well-intentioned, and he didn't want to be overly enthusiastic. "Wait for my message, at most 2 days. I'll find you a job that doesn't involve gangs or guns, so that our Italian girls can learn. Thank you, waiting for good news." Bill raised his glass. Although he didn't believe the bartender's words, he still wanted to give face. P.S. For collection, for recommended tickets, for monthly tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Sponsorship fees. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Sponsorship fees. Brooklyn, at the entrance of Fort Hamilton High School. Bill, who slept until he woke up naturally, went to his former high school on weekdays to see if he could continue his studies in grades 10 to 12, earn enough AP credits, and take the SAT exam. Just like Bill Gates' mother, who is an IBM director, there is a deep wrong impression that American public schools are very poor. Students open and impart to hide guns and smoke leaves. Private schools are generally better than public schools. In fact, this is a very one-sided view. Even in two schools in the same community, there may be differences in ideas between principals and teachers. There are a total of 19,314 public high schools, over 8,200 private day high schools, and over 300 boarding private high schools in the United States. Among them, New York State has over 1,260 public high schools, Texas has over 1,700 public high schools, and California to the west has 1,243 private high schools. This data actually reflects the problem, as 1/7 of private high schools are concentrated in California on the West Coast, while public high schools in New York, Texas account for 1/6 of the United States. In a general sense, the public education system in the Northeast of the United States is relatively complete, and the quality of public schools is also preferred. The public schools in the Midwest and South, which were developed late, are the American high schools in the stereotype of the Internet. There are two main factors that determine the quality of public high schools in the United States. First, whether the community they live in is a high-income community, and second, the quality of students. Student quality can also be understood as the immigrant ethnicity of the student. Generally speaking, in public high schools with a high number of East Asian and especially Chinese students, no matter how poor, there is no difference. For example, a public high school in Flushing, Queens, New York. As Flushing is the largest Chinese community in North America, 55% of its students are Chinese, which makes the school's SAT and AP scores exceptionally high. As a result, the school has become the #1 public high school in New York State, ranking approximately 12th in the United States. If it weren't for the fact that Chinese students were too overwhelmed in education and universities were limiting the enrollment ratio and quotas for Chinese students, Flushing's high school would definitely be able to compete with the top 3 or even top high schools in the United States. As far as Bill knows, the high school he dropped out of had a ranking of around 200 in the state, which is not low. He was able to attend this high school before because public schools in the United States usually enroll nearby residents, which belongs to the type of click and send. He only looks at the water, electricity, and coal bills for the past 2 months, and does not need any proof from the community. At the extreme, as long as a student can prove during the post-enrollment inspection that they live in the community near the school and receive various bills distributed by the school, they can live here normally. But once it is discovered that fraud has been committed, the consequences will be borne by oneself. Some Chinese people take advantage of such loopholes to send their children to their friends' homes to obtain admission to good public high schools. When encountering friends who exploit loopholes like this, please sever ties on the spot. Another example is Williamsburg, the northernmost part of Brooklyn, which is very close to Manhattan in the center of New York. In the 1920s, it became the synonym of New York's fashion industry. Housing prices rose to a higher level in New York City. The bankruptcy sister story was set here, and Brother Rabbit also lived here. As housing prices rise, it means that residents' income increases and communities become more upscale, leading to an improvement in the quality of public high schools in this area. But in the 1980s, even Manhattan was synonymous with chaos, shooting, and disorder, and Brooklyn's reputation was not much better. In the eyes of ordinary Americans, Brooklyn at this time was roughly equivalent to the mafia stronghold and a holy land for Italian immigrants. This stereotype varies greatly, and Brooklyn's status among Italian Americans is roughly equivalent to the status of Flushing in the hearts of Chinese Americans in the neighboring Queens. The poor living environment of public high schools results in lower student enrollment compared to public high schools of the same level. But no matter how bad it is, it will still be difficult for a student who dropped out for 2 years to come back to class. However, it's not a big deal. Americans are the ones who prefer the idea of a prodigal son turning back. Moreover, Bill is of Italian descent and his parents have both died. In the politically correct original version, this buff is still much stronger than the average student. At the school gate, although Bill's large body made the 2 security guards a bit nervous, he was not very embarrassed after indicating his purpose and identity. A white security guard, who may be of Irish descent, helped him make an on-campus phone call to the principal, while another black security guard took him to the principal's office. The principal's name is George Jackson, a bald middle-aged skinny white man who, based on his name and baldness, is likely of English descent. This is commonly known as the WASP, White Anglo-Saxon Protestant, group. This group is the first descendants of immigrants to come to North America, thus occupying the highest ecological position and being the founder of American politics, economy, culture, and education. Apart from WASP, the highest status groups are Irish Canadian Catholics and German Canadian Protestants. The status of Italian Canadian Catholics is relatively low among white people, and even in the 1980s, Italian Americans could not be called white. On the internet, lazy people like to play with the American Grand Commander's melazone, which belongs to the Irish Catholic category. Lazone was the first American Grand Commander to break the monopoly of the WASP community on the position of Grand Commander. Principal Jackson, it's like this. Bill began to recount his experiences after dropping out of school, with a nose full of tears, as he had anticipated. He then explained how he had come to realize the importance of learning and his previous ignorance. Perhaps my parents, guided by God, gave me a new direction in life. On a deserted night, I felt that this kind of life was too mediocre, and returning to school was the right path. I love learning, I must finish high school and then get into a good university, without leaving any regrets in life. The way of redemption is in the book. Imagine, a person who loves learning, calculus, solid geometry, and analytic geometry. No matter how bad he is, where can he go? Bill did his best to perform in front of the principal and black security guard his remorse for getting lost in the military and his gratitude for returning knowing his way back, as well as his anxiety that could only be relieved by studying. He also expressed his gratitude to the principal and school staff appropriately. If they can allow themselves to return to school and retake the course. Principal Jackson quietly watched Bill's performance and then said calmly, "Child, you also know that once admitted, public schools cannot expel students. This not only protects you, but also protects other students. And now it's September, and the quota for this year is already full. I can't coordinate the quota for other students to give you." He covered his mouth and pondered for a moment. "How about this? I'll write you a recommendation letter to attend another public high school." Bill was a bit dumbfounded. How could it be different from what he thought? He hurriedly said, "It's okay, I just want to attend our school. I don't need your recommendation letter." George Jackson nodded and said, "You're such a good student who loves to learn. Since you must attend my school, then. Come back next year. In June next year, if you're really interested, I can reserve a spot for you." Then he waved his hand and asked the black security guard to take the person away. Bill, however, was unwilling to accept it. His mind was spinning at lightning speed, and he suddenly realized that he might not have given the money. American public schools also have a tradition of receiving sponsorships. With money, everything is easy to talk about and everything can be done. If I sponsor the school with some money, can I start school this year? Jackson put down the document in his hand and held out his index and middle fingers horizontally with his right hand. Bill tentatively asked, $2,000. This is a considerable number. 20,000, George Jackson said the number very clearly. Bill understood, this person didn't want to take him, just wanted to send him away. There is no need to waste time here as Bill only needs a high school that offers AP courses. He turned around and left, but when he went out, he met 4 strong white men, one of whom was the Irish white security guard he had just met at the school gate. "It's him. P.S. for collection, for recommended tickets, for monthly tickets." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. I became a permanent opposition in American campus drama. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. I became a permanent opposition in American campus drama as a high school rugby coach. Jack Murphy has been having a lot of troubles lately. Rugby, as the most popular competitive sport in the United States, naturally started with dolls. However, rugby is a truly wealthy sport, with helmets, shoulder pads, elbow pads, hip pads, knee pads, thigh pads, hand protectors, shin protectors, protective gear, sneakers, and jerseys that can cost hundreds of dollars. In rugby games, physical confrontation is very intense, and helmet protectors cannot be omitted, so most teenagers from families cannot afford to play rugby. Nowadays is the annual start of school season, which is also the selection period for new members of the school team. The quarterback and fullback of rugby are usually campus stars, and the cheerleading team captain and team members are casually selected. If a player becomes famous in the team, a female classmate who looks up to them on campus can roll the sheets by whistling. In such an atmosphere, naturally, a large number of boys sign up to participate in the selection process as soon as the school starts. But what disappointed Jack Murphy was that the physical fitness of the boys running this year was a bit poor, especially in terms of height and weight. He had lowered the standard to 1.80 meters and 160 pounds, about 725,000 grams, but the number of people he could meet was not enough to meet the quota for graduating students in the 10th and 2nd grade who were about to withdraw. We cannot lower the standards anymore, as it means a decline in the physical fitness of team members, a decline in team performance, and a decrease in our own bonuses. So when someone reported that a strong young man had arrived at school, Coach Murphy came with 2 assistant coaches. At the entrance of the principal's office on the 2nd floor of the office building, Coach Murphy saw the so-called strong guy. This is a standard Italian handsome guy, with thick eyebrows, big eyes, deep eyes, and a high nose. His brown-black hair adds a touch of exotic charm to his handsome face out of thin air. Just looking at the face, it's already at the level of a movie star. But this is not the reason why Coach Murphy's mouth watered quickly. A physique of at least 220 pounds, measuring 1.9 meters by sight, is what it is. Thank God for the gift. Coach Murphy, who wiped his saliva, walked up to Bill and instinctively touched his big arm and shoulder. TSK TSK TSK, God, you touched this arm. The coach, with his big teeth bared, looked at a supportive coach, Robert, and recommended the muscles of this dream player to him. Bill felt inexplicable. He had just been rejected by this greedy principal and was about to go find another public school to handle his education. Just as he left, he was blocked by a middle-aged man who was full of hustle and bustle, and was constantly being touched. He pushed the middle-aged white man in front of him, who had no manners at all, back 2 steps and sat on the ground unsteadily. To Bill's surprise, the middle-aged white man who was pushed down not only didn't get angry, but also burst into laughter. The black security guard who had just led the way reacted fiercely and prepared to stop Bill's further actions, but was stopped by another young white man who also laughed heartily. The more Bill feels confused, are these white people taking drugs? The behavior is so bizarre. The middle-aged white man who was pushed to the ground couldn't speak and just smiled, while the other few were also laughing. Bill decided to ignore these people and just lifted his leg to leave. The young white man who had previously stopped the black security action reacted quickly. He first stood across to Bill and then called out, "Boy, I heard you need to go back to school. I think we can help." After speaking, he stared at Bill with a smile on his face. The feeling these people gave Bill from start to finish was eerie. What kind of plane? I want you to take care of the bald man inside. Can you do it? He doesn't want to waste time with this group of suspected gay people. The middle-aged white man on the ground smiled for a while, finally able to speak. With the help of his companions, he stood up and spread out his hands, saying, "Child, in the position you are standing in this school, no matter what, if you want you to speak up, I will help you do it." Then, he pointed to the beechwood door in the principal's office and said, "Now, I'll fulfill your wish. Let's take care of the principal and let him meet your requirements." Bill reminded him, "This bald man said he needs a sponsorship fee of $20,000 to get me back to school for a repeat." The middle-aged white man opened his hands horizontally from his chest and said, "No problem. Not only do you not need to give him sponsorship fees, but I will also ask him to give you money, but there is only one small condition. After I help you achieve your wish, you have to fulfill one of my wishes." He confidently turned around, pushed open the office door, and then pulled his right hand from head to toe, making a very coquettish gesture of inviting in. Although it was still inexplicable, Bill saw that these people were not malicious and probably not gay, so he returned to the office to listen to how the middle-aged white man handled the principal. With school staff present, 2 security guards, 1 white and 1 black, naturally returned to their posts, and the remaining few walked into the office. "My foolish principal, if you open your eyes and look at this hard-working, handsome student, you know you shouldn't miss out on such a good opportunity to attend Ohio State University." Coach Murphy began to verbally criticize the principal, initially in a polite tone, but later became more and more impolite. F and other tone words were mixed in incomplete sentences, starting from their college years and exposing the embarrassing incident of the principal being dumped by his English girlfriend due to arrogance. "You, a German, happen to have the surname of a British person. You really thought you were an AS. The middle-aged white man revealed that the principal was German, and Bill began to understand why he was rejected. Because Germans are the group that looks down on other white people the most. In fact, other non-Germanic white people may be seen as a bunch of soap in their eyes. I warn you, if my bonus is deducted, all the dinners this year will be your share of the money. Coach Murphy finally finished cursing and ended his persuasion of the principal with what he felt was the most serious words. During this process, Principal Jackson didn't say a word, and he didn't know why his college roommate went crazy, but in the end, he understood that he had to accept this future rugby star. Well. Principal Jackson laughed heartily to cover up his embarrassment in front of the others. This is my mistake. I didn't realize that Bill Ferrari was actually a football star. He didn't add the adjective future in Coach Murphy's mouth, making the words football star sound a bit ironic. Bill didn't care about these details. The only thing he understood was that he didn't have to pay a $20,000 sponsorship fee to return to school, at the cost of joining the rugby school team. Well, this is actually not the cost. The American high school rugby players are really the kind of players who walk horizontally in school. They have a team of several grades, with over 50 members in the espionage, attack, and defense groups, all of whom are big and powerful fighters. Therefore, the antagonists on American campuses often have football captains paired with cheerleaders. The classic American bullying is when these two people express in front of the bullied that this is their territory and ask them to leave quickly, otherwise they will have to help with their homework. During this time, there are often weekends when they have to lie down, but if they haven't invited the bullied, they will have to help with their homework. Of course, awkward dance is indispensable. I didn't expect to become a regular villain in American campus dramas, and Bill thinks this result is acceptable. P.S. Readers, please collect and recommend tickets for monthly tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Efficiency of Italians. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Efficiency of Italians. As the birthplace of quantifying competitive sports data, various sports competitions in the United States can be made into a series of numbers and presented to coaches and audiences. Joining the rugby school team is the same. Coach Murphy was drooling over Bill's strong physique, so he naturally wanted Bill to have a physical test on the spot. But Bill, under the pretext of having to deal with family matters, pushed the complete physical examination that should have been done to Wednesday. 74 inches, 220 pounds, without undergoing systematic muscle-building training, it's a perfect defensive interceptor, and also a good end striker for the attacking team. In the coach's office at the gym, Murphy praised it this way. The defensive team is a group of players in a rugby team responsible for defending, usually the largest ones, while the interceptor's main responsibility is to attack the quarterback and also to defend against running. The importance of defensive interception can be determined by salary. In the National Football League, NFL, the highest paid player is the team's quarterback, and the second highest paid player is the interception position. The interception of the defensive group is slightly lower than the left interception of the attacking group, but there is also little difference. As for the end striker, they are the two farthest edges of the attacking group. The strong side is called the tight end, TE, and the weak side is called the far end, SE. End forwards, especially near forwards, are usually the most flexible players in the attacking team. Depending on the coach's philosophy in quarterback tactical arrangements, near forwards can perform duties such as holding the ball as runners or passing players, blocking defensive players, catching passes from passing players, or working with other attacking forwards to provide stronger protection for the quarterback. Forrest Gump, who is well known to the public in Forrest Gump, is a running guard in the attacking team. Because he is particularly capable of running and has a strong physique, he serves as a running guard. Bill, who was surrounded by the coach and two assistant coaches, didn't quite understand why Coach Murphy was so excited, but judging from their actions, he was a natural rugby player. But he didn't know much about this ball game, only knowing that it was the largest competitive sport in the United States. The NFL's annual championship game was called Super Bowl, which has been the highest-rated television program in the United States for many years and has gradually become an unofficial national holiday. Moreover, Super Bowl day is the second highest daily food consumption day in the United States, second only to Thanksgiving. The original owner doesn't know much about rugby. After all, their family mainly watches baseball, which is MLB. As for the NBA, which is well known to Chicago audiences, it ranks fourth among the 4 major professional sports leagues in the United States and focuses on overseas markets. Robert, a younger support coach, agreed, Bill's strength is also very strong. Coach, you also come from a professional background and were suddenly overthrown by him. Thank God for the gift. As he spoke, he drew a cross on his chest. Murphy became even happier and followed suit by drawing a cross. Another assistant coach, James, asked, Bill, I'm curious. What have you been doing in the past 2 years? Of course, asking this is purely to satisfy my curiosity. If there are any privacy questions, you can also choose not to answer. This is a white man wearing a red duckbill cap, dressed in casual gray short sleeves, with a sunburned neck that looks like a farm white man from a southern state. Also known as the red neck, the term redneck was considered a derogatory term for poor white men in the South in American media during the 20th century. But in the 1970s, mainly during the reign of Yoshimi Carter, the term redneck chic emerged, which means that white people became fashionable by sunbathing themselves with red necks through beauty. So James is probably not a poor white man from the southern state, but a trendy city white man. Bill thought for a moment and realized that the original owner didn't do anything earth-shattering during the 2 years he dropped out of school. He had been in society for 2 years, and this could be written down in his future resume. A few years ago, my parents passed away due to a robber. Before telling his own story, Bill worked hard to make himself look sad. The 3 people around were indeed touched. Coach Murphy stopped smiling, and Robert patted Bill's arm. So when I entered high school, I became at a loss because no one told me what to do. My uncle and aunt, who raised me, were busy with work and couldn't even manage their own children. So I learned from my cousin and left school to go to nightclubs and bars to make ends meet. I wake up around noon every day, then work in the afternoon until early morning. After 2 years, perhaps guided by God, one day I had a dream. I dreamed that I was doing experiments in college, had a beautiful girlfriend, and my mentor and classmates were also very friendly. The future seemed bright, and then I woke up. Since then, I have been focused on returning to school and living the kind of life I dreamed of. After a few weeks of hesitation, I finally took this step and tried to return to campus. Thank you all very much. If it weren't for you all today, I might have extinguished this dream. Murphy and the 2 assistant coaches were naturally very helpful. Coach Murphy turned his head and looked like he should have done it. In American society, there is a very invisible rule that we can call reputation, which means in the mouths of others, a man does something good. If Bill becomes a well-known rugby player in the future, even if he is not nationally renowned, but only famous in the university team, Murphy and others can appear on Bill's public thank you list, and often only the first few players appear. This is the potential reputation. So these 3 talents are so useful. After chatting for a while, these 3 agreed to let Bill leave. Of course, before leaving, a lot of words were thrown out. Dear Bill, if you have any difficulties, any obstacles that hinder you from realizing your dream of going to college, you can come to me. My home phone number is xxxx.xxxx. Bill took note of this phone number using the paper in Murphy's office. The coach of the high school rugby team, who is also considered a wealthy middle-class person, may not know when he will use it. Okay, see you on Wednesday. After bidding farewell, Bill went to his nightclub where he worked. Since he could go to school, he should quit this time-consuming and laborious job. In the United States, public high school education is generally free, and there is no need to pay tuition fees, which makes Bill less worried about dim sum. The lobby manager of the nightclub felt quite regretful about Bill's decision, if you want, we welcome you back here anytime. Even if we can hold a physical activity for you to drop out of school again. The knowledge acceptance of the lower class people in the United States is not large, so some people are very anti-intellectual and resist going to school for education. So in the eyes of the nightclub manager, Bill was running to hell to seek punishment. The sparrow knew the ambition of the swan, but Bill ignored the nightclub manager's sincere persuasion and left directly. On this day, Bill was satisfied with achieving his initial goal. Without a car, he whistled and headed home. At my uncle's doorstep, another piece of good news awaits him. Boy, I want you to experience the efficiency of Italians. P.S. For collection, for recommended tickets, for monthly tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Human Relations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Human Relations. At his doorstep, Bill met the bartender from last night. His first comment about the efficiency of Italians almost made Bill burst out laughing. The efficiency of Italians is only comparable to that of Indian assassins. Sir, may I ask why you came out of my house? It's a bit outrageous for those who live outside to find their uncle's house and still be able to enter. Unless he followed up here after Bill finished drinking last night. The bartender was very honest, saying that he had found Bill's address through the gang members. He came this afternoon mainly to introduce Bill to a job, and coincidentally, Dorothy and Neo were at home. He went in to chat for a while and met Bill when he went out. I heard your request last night and made several phone calls before I found something I could ask you to do. Now listen carefully. The bartender, who was over 1.7 meters tall, gestured for Bill to lower his head and speak closer. There is a person at customs who has encountered some trouble. He has been falsely accused by an Irish gangster gang and needs a few people to deal with it. Coincidentally, he also doesn't want to use a gun, nor does he want to get involved with the gang that the FBI is closely monitoring. Before 7 p.m. tonight, you can go to XXX Pierre Street and get around $200 in compensation. Bill thought this person was just for fun, but he never expected to find a job in the gray area that met Bill's requirements in a single day. The vast majority of Irish gangs are only at the level of street gangs, with a strong sense of territory and no intention of expanding their business. They are far inferior to Mexican gangs that can establish cross-state distribution systems in the southern United States, or Italian gangs controlled by parliamentary mechanisms composed of leaders of major families, from street makers to large communities and partners. Perhaps a group of Irish thugs who smoke leaves will start a gang in a large house painted with graffiti, and then start looking for those thugs who smoke alone to collect some protection money as drug money. Dealing with such people, if the employer still demands not to use the gun, then there is probably no danger. I really don't know what to say to express my gratitude. Bill stood up straight and looked serious at the bartender. My friend, please let me know directly if you need me in the future. As a group that highly values human relationships, what Italian Americans value is that you help me this time and I will help you next time. You don't need to do a lot of help, just do your best and you'll still be in favor. This is different from the mainstream American society dominated by the WASP community, such as Coach Murphy. If he helps Bill, the feedback he wants is to acknowledge Murphy's help in public after Bill's success, and it is best to express gratitude in front of influential media. That is to boost Coach Murphy's reputation. The bartender was obviously satisfied with Bill's statement, "We're a family. Come to my tavern for drinks often in the future, don't forget to bring your sister." This bartender doesn't care much about the law anymore. Dorothy is currently 16 years old, and if she gets caught drinking again, she will be taken to the police station and wait for her guardian to claim it. After all, in terms of protecting minors, the United States can be said to be the world's leader. Even the small details of leaving a child under the age of several alone at home or in a car are illegal and can be written into state laws. The two of them had another cheesy conversation about meeting late, and Bill kept the bartender to eat his uncle's pasta before leaving. However, the bartender said he still had to work and patted Bill's cheek before leaving. This cheek slap is not an insult gesture, but a friendly gesture like punching or patting the shoulder. After going in and telling Dorothy that he had already taken care of his return to school and was going out to do something tonight, and gave his sister a $20 bill as dinner money for her and Neo, Bill immediately walked out of the house to find his cousin Anthony a few blocks away, so that he could take him to Pierre Street. There's no way, Bill, whose surname is Ferrari, doesn't have his own car. He drove his uncle's car to work and hasn't returned yet. Anthony's permanent house is similar to the gang base in movies and TV shows. From the corner of the street, there are idle watchmen, and at the door, there are two strong men standing. Bill believes that they must have Desert Eagle pistols attached to their backs, and even worse, they are also revolvers. After expressing his identity in Italian, one of the strong men went in to report. In about 5 or 6 minutes, Anthony, the bone crusher, walked out. This is my younger brother who works at XX nightclub. Anthony first confirmed Bill's identity to the two strong men on guard, and then asked his cousin what he was doing here. From this perspective, Anthony's position in this station is not too high, at least he has not opened up an insurmountable gap with these two strong men on guard. I need to borrow your car to do something at XX Pierre Street. Bill didn't say what to do, and I believe Anthony didn't want to hear it either. After all, in his heart, Bill's security profession is not mainstream. Pierre Street. Anthony muttered a few words, then remembered that it was a relatively safe neighborhood and not under the control of any Italian gang family. That is to say, my cousin won't be hindered by other gangs when he goes there. He took out the key from his pocket and said, "Go ahead. If you're a bit late for work, just drive over and get here after work." Anthony thinks a lot about his cousin, but unfortunately Bill has resigned and doesn't need to rush to work. After patting each other's cheeks, the two parted ways, and of course, Bill didn't forget to nod his head to the two strong men standing guard as a sign of respect. Anthony's car is a Ford hatchback, also known as a 5-door car. In the United States, where cars are only used as a means of transportation, such cars are a bit shabby. The American driver's license can be equivalent to another type of ID card, and Bill naturally took the test. In order to better cope with tonight's work, he also made a special trip to an Italian-owned home decoration shop in the community. In order to reduce taxes, most middle and lower-class Americans choose wooden houses, so home improvement shops have chainsaws to deal with various types of wood. After moving out the name of his uncle and grandfather's Conti family, the owner of the home improvement shop happily borrowed a chainsaw and taught Bill how to use it hand in hand. If you need any help from me in the future, please come to the Conti family to find me. Bill also didn't forget to give a confession of gratitude. Italian Americans did eat this trick, and the boss happily helped to load the chainsaw into the trunk of the car. Although Bill can definitely move alone. According to the map on the car, he arrived at his destination before 7 p.m. Eastern Time. This is an unfinished construction site, with 2 cars and 3 people waiting. P.S. For collection, for recommended tickets, for monthly tickets. End of this chapter.